What's up, everyone? This is Sahil here, and welcome to the Sehgal Show, where I'm gonna be interviewing some crazy entrepreneurs out there who started from scratch with no experience, resources, and connections, and then later on became unstoppable and dominating figures in their respective businesses. We're gonna dive deep into the mindset of these super successful entrepreneurs to find out how they did it and how you can model it too. It's time to pick their brains and uncover all the strategies and tactics which these entrepreneurs use to scale their businesses from nowhere to multiple 6, 7, and 8 figures. Welcome to the Sehgal Show. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Sehgal Show, where we interview some unstoppable entrepreneurs who are dominating figures in their businesses. And Sahil here back again today with an awesome, insane guest. Guess what? Who we have today on our show? The Tom Shipley. I'm going to be telling you a little bit about Tom. So, Tom is a serial entrepreneur, e-commerce and platform investor, strategic advisor, speaker, and over the past 20 years, he has become one of the leading experts in omnichannel brand building. His brands are widely recognized household names that can be seen on TV, radio, online, Amazon, and found in some major realtors as well. He's strategic advisor to Snow Teeth Whitening as well as the co-founder of Foundry. Most recently, Tom is the co-founder and CEO of Agency Ventures aggregator as well. His brands have collectively sold over 2 billion in sales. Let's welcome Tom. Welcome, Tom.
Sahil, good morning. Great to connect.
Good morning, man. It's a pleasure and honor to have you, bro. Okay. So, Tom, I must say your journey is crazy and unique. Like, you moved to Israel and joined the army, and then you came back. You started living this entrepreneur life, hitting this crazy 8, 9, and even 10 figures in your businesses. So, when and how exactly this crazy journey start?
Yeah, it's interesting. The question is always is someone born an entrepreneur or does it happen along the way? And I can say there's no equal paths as far as the way people get here, but there are those of us who always thought differently, did not fit in conventional boxes that have a natural tendency to be entrepreneurs. So I always knew I always was going to be one, and I always had some very ambitious goals. But I'll start with this: is that I'm a kid from Cleveland, Ohio, and Orlando, Florida. I was at Florida State University. Life in fraternity life and college life was great when I knew that I had to do something bigger and I couldn't wait. So I showed up on my parents' house. They were shocked to see me and announced that I'm moving to Israel. I'm going to be joining the Israeli Defense Forces. My father freaked out a little bit and then said, "Tom, understand that you don't speak the language at all. You don't know anything about the culture. You clearly don't understand about the army there. And athletically, you run, but you're not that great of an athlete. So if you're in the army, you may be pushing papers there if they allow you in." And I'm always up for a challenge. Someone doubts me. It fuels me. So I did move to Israel. I found out about the Special Forces, top 3 Special Forces unit. I identified with one of them and I created this vision that that's what I was going to be. I worked my ass off. I trained myself for it and I did everything I could to prepare myself for it. And out of 170,000 soldiers in the army, there's 60,000 combat soldiers. There's 10,000 soldiers that applied for my unit, out of which 1,000 of us were picked for Hell Week, which was just an incredible lesson. And the way they tried to break you, test you physically, emotionally, and also to even measure things like trust. And so at the end of the week, they picked 25 of us to go through an 18-month course, at the end of which there were 13 of us that were left to serve in the unit. I'm going to say that the greatest lessons in business, in team, and leadership, and ultimately entrepreneurship, I learned in the Special Forces in the Israeli Army. And I guess when you go through that is when we talk about difficult. Again, I have a different definition of what difficult is. When someone says something's impossible, I don't hear that. It doesn't mean anything to me. Again, I have a different paradigm on that because it clearly tested me, and I was able to shift. Quitting. You never quit. Never, ever, ever, ever give up. So again, there's so many lines I learned about, so many things I learned about resourcefulness, about team, about leadership. that became the foundation. And when I came back to the United States after 5 years there, I started my entrepreneurial journey because, again, I had very little to risk starting my first business, but I also got my degrees in industrial engineering. And that was my transition. I'm going to say I did fail for 2 years as I left and got a job in corporate America working for AT&T. And you know it's not right for you. While I was succeeding according to their eyes and getting promoted, for me, I was in jail. The freedom, the ability to take risks, to basically be responsible for my destiny and where I want to be spending the time and adding real value. And again, in a corporate environment, I could not do that. So when we found out my wife was pregnant, I realized that I had probably 6 months to figure out how to make my income cover her income and my income. And that's when I did that. Luckily, I've also learned a very, very valuable lesson in life is having the right partner or the right partner to go through your journey of life with is everything. Because luckily she had the faith in me and allowed me as she's pregnant with our first baby. And the one thing she was not very is risk tolerant, but she said, I trust you, go for it. So again, it was an incredible period of time. In 21 years ago, if you remember Web 1.0, early days of Google AdWords, email was even new. So it was very exciting. Is when I started my first, I'm going to say my first direct response business. We mailed out, it was an omnichannel business. We mailed out millions of catalogs. We have the Sky Mall in-flight magazine, which is in all of the airlines. We had 14 pages in that. It was an extremely exciting period of time of building that first company. I did some acquisitions and sold that business off in 2001. So just a quick background, 3 years of, just really quick, 3 years in my wilderness years doing consulting. 2005, I said, why don't I take the same playbook and apply it to an industry that they said it could not be done? You cannot build iconic beauty brands through direct response marketing. To me, that made no sense. Right now, we hear that and we think that's the stupidest thing anyone said, but that was the conventional wisdom. Our first brand, hydroxytone, we launched with limited capital, and within first year we did $330,000 in profit. 2 years later, we did $125 million.
Wow.
Now, part of that, I do admit, was fueled with the fact that we had the economic downturn in 2008, where basically most businesses shut down, closed. It was a very challenging period. I just had such economic hardships. We looked at firing half of our staff and just gutting our way through it. But another lesson that I learned over time is where people see adversity, I see opportunity. You just have to look. Sometimes you have to look a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right to see where the opportunities are. And in this case, it took hustle, is getting on the phone with all of our media companies, TV, radio, online. And since all the other advertisers dropped off the face of the earth, especially the big brands, because they didn't have cash, we started negotiating unfair deals for guaranteed cost per order, low cost media. It was the best media environment ever in history. We also pivoted our business model to give consumer financing, and you put those two together, and that's how we went from 300,000 to 125 million. Through all the channels, through primarily online, but we were doing TV, we were doing radio. It was explosive. It was just explosive growth that led to bricks and mortar retail. But that brand, hydroxytone, that we launched, that my partner and I launched, did $1 billion over its lifetime.
Oh my God.
We've launched a number of other brands, from Christy Brinkley Beauty, partnership with Christy Brinkley 11 years ago, a blue ocean opportunity in women's hair regrowth, Karenique, category leader and category king. And that brand did over $700 million over its lifetime. And we sold this portfolio of brands off to private equity last year. So that's kind of how I got, but in the meantime, two incredible daughters. Again, my life is my wife and my two daughters that are just the light of my life and just give me so much joy and energy. And so it's a big why. And the other why is I can't help myself. I want to have impact. I want to have massive impact in my lifetime. And through entrepreneurship, I can impact many people's lives. And this is the way I'm doing it. So every year I keep on trying to level up, saying, how can I do things at a bigger level? How can I add 1 or 2 zeros onto my ideas and have bigger impact? So,
Wow, that's amazing. That's beautiful whys that you got to, two of the whys that you mentioned, family, and then you, the impact that you want to create in the world. And the journey itself is speaking a lot. It's a lot of crazy things that happened being an engineer, and then you joined AT&T. I was also an engineer. I joined AT&T. I have worked for AT&T. Same
That's
thing.
great.
And then the life that you mentioned about in the army, that it's not easy. Like directly it's saying that life is not easy. You did so many things, and there were so many tests out there you did to qualify to come into that phase of the whatever point of you can say that you got that what do you call declaration, or you got that medal, you got that on the badge on the on your uniform. That's what you get after the
And
uniform,
it's
after
the so when
army.
we get in and we repelled on the helicopters at our induction ceremony and get the insignia, or if in our case it's wings because we were special
Yeah,
forces
thanks.
attached to the Air Force. Yeah.
True. That's, and you were wired as an engineer, entrepreneur, basically. That's what you were wired. And at what time of the life you realized that this is the time I need to leave the army, I need to jump into this entrepreneur world? And what was the family situation at that time? Do you have
Oh,
kids?
well, again, I was young. So when I got out of the Army, I
Mhm.
was 25. I had no family and I served my service. Again, I completed my service and I was out. I wasn't going to sign on for more time in the Army because it was time for my next chapter. And my next chapter was getting my education, but I couldn't help myself but to start my first business.
Oh, amazing.
And
And
that
of
was the
course,
timeline. But it was within a month after the Army, I met my wife.
mhm.
And since the first day I met her, we've been together ever since. And so it took us 2 years to get married, and total of 10 years before we said maybe we should have kids because we were having so much fun. But then we didn't know how magic life is with kids, also. So,
Yeah, that's crazy. That's amazing. Love it. And what are the, like, some of the killer lessons that you have learned while being a special forces operator, which helped you or currently is helping you in your business?
okay, let's start with we were certified in many things in the Army. We were trained on rescues from everywhere, from primarily a lot from helicopter or from ropes along rivers or along mountains. Um, Rescues in the ocean ship rescues. But in addition to that, we were trained in combat in cities and combat in the field. So again, so a lot of things. Um, um, and so scuba diving. So again, we were trained in a lot of different disciplines. One of the things we were trained in is medics. We were all medics because our goal was our task was to rescue soldiers wherever they were across enemy lines, wherever they were in the world. And so and we have to be able to operate as either individuals or small teams of 3 people. And so we were all trained medics. In medics course, where there's an expression, Chovesh tov ze chovesh me'alter, or chayel tov ze chayel shemalter. A good soldier or a good medic is one who improvises. Core lesson is you will never have the resources and the tools you need to save a life or to do things in life, period. So the question is how resourceful can you be? And so in life and business as an entrepreneur, you'll never have, I don't care how much money you raise, the team you have in place, you will never have the resources accessible. And sometimes when you're resource light, you actually get more creative. So you have to really focus on the creative. You know, there's been times where I've been up against the wall with no solutions and no way out, and where my advisors and my business has told us to shut it down. It's not going to, there's no way out. May cut your losses and move on. And the question is how resourceful can you be? Does it give you, again, after you get through the initial shock, or what I call weak at the knees moments, or you get the butterflies and the oh shit, when you get beyond that, is how can you think clearly and how can you come up with truly creative resources? I'll share a story that it was, how you go through these arcs, and as an entrepreneur, you're constantly doing this. Now, hopefully you're doing this. Let me get in front of the camera. So that hopefully you're doing the upward arc versus always just like this. But so in 2018, we had 3 offers to buy our portfolio of brands under Atlantic Coast Brands between $55 to $75 million. Again, it was an extremely exciting period of time. We've always had ups and downs, but really we were really on a great trajectory. And so it's exciting. We had companies, private equity firms that were fighting over themselves to buy our company. And three things happened to us within a very short period of time. The first and the main one was we had a single source manufacturer. They are the only FDA approved company in the world to make one of our core products, which was key for our continuity of our business. When they basically went bankrupt with one day, with even a day's notice, they went bankrupt, out of business, couldn't get any supply. We couldn't ship our auto ships. So we were making close to $1 million a month. Suddenly we were losing. Again, we barely even broke even from before overhead. So we're losing $600,000 a month. Our bank said, you guys are done. We're shutting you off. So from the high, we're selling our company to this, and where people said, there's no way out, you're done. And so here's a really powerful lesson I learned is I was at Russell Brunson's Inner Circle meeting, and my wife and I flew out to Boise for this, and we were running on this cold day along the Boise River, and it was slightly drizzling. And I turned to my wife and I said, Pam, you know the situation we're in. Can we just go to the dark side? She said, let's go there. I said, okay. She said, okay, so what's going on? I said, so I laid it out very quickly. I said, losing money. Our head of marketing said he can't figure out our CMO said he can't see anything else that we can do differently. Our banks are shutting us down. And so we're at this crossroads. She said, okay, let's go there now. She said, what's going to happen if you can't pull it out? I said, well, there's going to be, our employees are going to lose their jobs. Everything we built for all these years is gone. We're going to have 1,000 people in our ecosystems which will probably lose their jobs. It's a devastating thing. It's also horribly embarrassing after where we've been, but it's the negative impact of everything happening. And she said, and then what? I said, and then what? Well, probably owe money to the IRS. We'll lose our house. We'll lose all of our assets. She said, and then what? I said, we'll be living in an apartment. She said, and then what? I said, we'll start hustling, working again. She said, and where will we be in 5 years? I said, better than we are now. And she said, so what do you worry about? So with that, I went to the Inner Circle meeting and I started reaching out to everyone I know and said, okay, give me your best ideas. And then I put them together and I put together a list and said, here's all the ideas of how we're going to turn around. And then I ranked every idea by magnitude of impact, the resources and time required, as well as probability of success. And I ranked those with a high probability of success, big impact, low resources, and again, from top to bottom. And or you put this on a 2x2 grid, the same thing. So you focus on those in one quadrant. And that's what you draw your team to. And then you pull your team together and you have an honest meeting, totally open with them. And you basically, this is the war plan you're doing and you're getting their buy-in. And some of your team members are going to be there. And we lost 3 people right away that weren't up for that. The rest of the people signed up for it with open hearts. And then I brought in 2 new team members onto the team, even in the situation that had the unique skills that I needed in order to pull this off. And then we went through massive imperfect action, knowing that even if 2/3 of what we're doing fail, if that third wins, we got this. And every month we grinded it. It was the best year to year and a half of my life, because turning this company around, watching the team dig all in, it was spectacular, and getting the company back to the same level of profitability that it was. And again, massive imperfect action, all in, very focused, always looking at the priorities. But what we had to do is we had to be extremely resourceful and do things and it had me also letting some people go that were stuck in the old ways, because I needed fresh ideas. The old ideas doesn't happen. The old ideas got us stuck. And this is really, and for me as a CEO, when you have a certain level of team, you get pulled out of things. Me actually be able to roll up my sleeve and get into the trenches again, and working with my design team and my developers and my marketing team, and my analytics team was just a blast. So resourcefulness. There's a story that was exposed to me years ago when Myron Golden introduced me to U Squared by Price Pitch It. I don't know if you've ever read it. It's a small 38-page book. It's very small. And there's a story in there where, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, is if you ever been inside a room and there's sun coming in and suddenly somehow through a cracked door, a cracked window, a fly gets in. and the fly starts going towards the light of the window, and it starts pinging your window, and you just basically hear that ping, 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 and it's going hard. It's trying to get through that window to get outside again. And it keeps on going harder and harder, keeps on going, and eventually it loses energy and falls, and it tries again, and eventually over time it dies. However, if it just pulls back and goes, and right here goes for the open window, the open crack, the same when it came in through, it would have been a different outcome. Sometimes we're fighting so hard and we're white knuckling to one solution, and sometimes the solution to our solution is right a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, and we just have to ask the right questions and open the door and go through those.
That's so true. And being resourcefulness, that's a great thing. It creates opportunities then. You don't feel like stuck at that time. You look for here and there, just like analogies that you shared. It's beautiful. I'm gonna use it. That's really yeah, a powerful one. And at the same time, you got a very supporting wife who took care of that at that time when you needed that support. Because at the end of the day, we all are humans, right? Maybe some people see you from a different perspective, like, oh, Tom is a genius, he's like champions of the champions, he knows everything. But I'm sure we all are humans, we get stuck sometimes, we need guidance, we need support, we need to consult with someone. How difficult was it for you at that time, Tom, to show your, maybe when the story that you shared, you went to Russell Brunson, that cruise trip, like how difficult was it for you to show your vulnerable side at that time?
That was very painful because I was trained in the fact of you have problems, you suck it in, you keep it private, and you just don't show that. And so, but it was, once you are vulnerable, the amount of people that will help you and understand you is phenomenal. And who cares? And you got, in business, you got to get rid of this whole thing about embarrassment and shame. It's just part. And if anyone who's really been around the block, you've been through enough cycles, we're all going to go through this. And no matter what it is, I know I'll have hard times, but I know I can leverage my network of people around me and my friends. And you see who your true friends are. Those people that are the skeptics that will say, I told you it was going to happen to you. You know something? I don't hear it. And that's a whole, that's the whole thing. So there's, another thing that lesson I learned in the Army was one things they did when they did our induction, when they went through that week of Hell Week, they actually, I remember it was 3 nights of barely sleeping. And then they finally let us go down about 1:30. We were exhausted and pain. And suddenly an hour later, firecrackers went off and they woke us up and they said, okay, we want everyone to line up, and we can barely even stand up, and we're just exhausted, falling asleep. They said, we want every individual to run on their own 100 yards into the desert, past these bushes. There's going to be a phosphorus light, a nightstick there. When you get to it, do 100 push-ups and then run back, and we're going to time how long it takes you to get there. Do your push-ups and get back. So suddenly I went and did mine. I went and I jumped down. I'm saying, oh my God, I have to go as fast as possible because I have to meet that cutoff. And I did it, and I went, oh my God, did I do 99 or did I do 100? So I jumped down, did an extra one, and I came back. The next morning, we all woke up. The next morning, they called 15 people, and they said, basically, you guys are out. Why? Because they went out in the dark. They didn't think anyone was watching, and they didn't do any push-ups, and they ran back. They cheated. In any team and any special forces, ultimately, what you have to rely on is trust. And trust ultimately is what you do when no one's looking. Shortcuts can kill people. Shortcuts can kill a business. And so if I have a choice on my teams and I'm building to have people that are, by the way, I only want to work with A players. I don't like mediocre. I can't handle people that I'm not good with, people that can't think on their own, regardless of what their day-to-day job is. But I will take people that are slightly less capable and not the biggest stars in the world if there's a high level of trust. So I look at performance and trust on them. Same thing. A grid matrix is you have to have people of high capability and capacity, but people of high trust, because if not, you're going to destroy the team. And what has always been true, but is especially true in the fast-paced times we are, is I don't care what patents you have. I don't care how great your technology is. I don't care how much cash you have in the bank. The ultimate competitive advantage is to your teammates and your culture, because it's about the speed in which you can move and adapt and change and think through problems. And companies that don't have healthy cultures, when they hit walls, and they will, don't have that agility. And everything, we were separated, the way we were separated in units and trained, and we're trained to question everything and the quality of the teams. That's why I was trained in Israeli Special Forces, and it's the same expectations I have for my teams.
Oh, that's powerful. You learned a lot of lessons from army, and then to a normal person, it looks like I'm feeling like a little bit of torture as well. And you get like, so again, life is not easy. That's what you learned there, and the principles that you learned there, now you're implementing in the business, working with A players, or measuring their using a metrics chart. As you mentioned, that's helps you, is helping you right now in your business. That's crazy. It's really powerful, and not a lot of people can do it because you have been through that stuff. You know what you have gone through and what you have learned from there, the principles, and now you're using it here. It's helping you a lot. Like, I can see that. That's amazing.
So, Sahil, there's something really, really important. And the challenge is, I look at so many businesses, and I have bought so many businesses. And right now, I have two different businesses that our business is buying businesses.
Mhm.
And when I see businesses that have such great potential and they seem to get stuck at a certain level, whether that's a million in sales, 3 million, 5 million, 20 million, it doesn't matter. They get stuck. And my always question is, why do they get stuck at that level? And typically, it's the CEO and the level of expectations they have in their head, and they get stuck at the level. In general, as people, as you know, is that we have our frontal cortex, and I'm going to call it's our reptilian brain. It's there to protect ourselves. And the more we get stung, and the more we get hurt, and the more we fall in life, it creates different layers, and therefore we have these loops of lessons that we do. Well, lessons are good, so we don't have to put our hand back on the stove and learn a second time that don't touch a hot stove. On the other hand, it also limits our ability to think, and think big. And so the first example I had is that the idea that I can only be in the army, I can maybe be a bureaucrat. Let me become a combat soldier. Let me see if I can get into a commando unit. Let me see if I can get into the top special forces unit. And that lesson of imagine life without limits, and just what would be possible if you didn't have the limitations there. And then set your expectation, your goal, and figure out a way to get there, but create that vision and manifest your reality. And I'm going to say in business, we do that. So one of the exercises that I do now is, I did this 2 years ago, and that's the way I founded Foundry, our Amazon and ecom aggregator that we raised $100 million to buy Amazon ecom brands. It was in the beginning of COVID, and I knew we were going to sell Atlantic Coast brands. My partner and I were going to sell it over the next year. And then I started saying, well, why don't I have time? I'm no longer commuting 4 hours a day. So what I want to do in my spare time, why don't I start to buy one or two brands, Amazon ecom brands? And then I asked the question is add a zero onto that. Okay. Instead of buying one or two brands a year, what if I bought one or two brands a month? Add a zero onto that. What if I bought 10 brands a month? What would be if I bought 10 $3 to $5 million brands a month? What would happen? Well, what would happen if I succeed in doing that and we're successful, is we're basically one of the larger consumer products good companies. And if we do it right with the right tech staff, analytics, and we're direct to consumer with retail as other channels, then basically what we've done is we've created a better model to build a consumer products good company. Wow. Okay, so imagine what would be possible. And then the question is, what operating assumption? What would have to be possible to make that possible? What would have to be? And then I go through my assumptions. Well, first of all, we need the infrastructure, systems, and process to be able to handle a large number of brands in a replicable way. We need to have a pipeline in order to acquire brands. We need to be able to manage every brand uniquely so they don't lose their brand identity. So I laid out all the assumptions, and based on I did some research where the market is we need access to start off with $100 million. And therefore that started with, okay, now I know where we're going to go. Now I know the plan. Now I know how we're going to get there. And then I met with 7 private equity firms and got 6 term sheets between $50 and $150 million. Put 2 of my favorite together, and that's how we raised $100 million for Foundry. But sometimes it is about getting out of your head taking the limitations and imagine what life would be, imagine what the opportunity would be without limits. But ultimately, you're going to have to be able to build on your operating assumptions and create new ones and make those true in order to achieve that.
True. Absolutely amazing. That's amazing. And you mentioned about, like, I'm really curious to know about this thing. You mentioned about some businesses, like, they scale it to 1 million, maybe 10 million or more, and then everything collapse, right? Sometimes, what is the major difference that you see between businesses which have long-term existence and businesses which collapsed in a couple of years?
Well, first of all, is that every, okay, everything has a shelf life.
True.
Every technology will be at some point become outdated. Every marketing channel will become inefficient. Every marketing campaign will become so. You have to accept the fact that everything will be outdated. So what you have to be constantly doing is reinvesting for the future and investing what that is and taking part of your revenue and part of your proceeds, and then that is expect this and building and testing for the next thing. And innovation has to become part of a culture, has to be part of the plan. As you build your 3 to 5 year roadmaps, you update every year. That has to be part of the roadmap for the future. And part of it is the do you have a culture of innovation? Do you have a culture of that enables people to test and fail, or are people so scared for their jobs that they can't do that? So again, and you just create that plan and keep on investing, and then asking the questions I do which is, um, what is possible? Let's create a new vision for the company and let's bring things to the next level and understand. Also, be able to react. There's a thing about focusing on, it's a balance. What is possible in this vision, but also reacting somewhat to the marketplace. We know with Elon Musk, one of his companies, they spent so much time on technology on their platform. And there was this little piece of how to transfer money that people seem to be attracted to in that platform that he built. And suddenly he realized that that's really where the market value is. So they basically ignored all the beautiful, complex code and the solutions they developed. They focused on this one functionality, and that became PayPal.
Hmm.
Sometimes you have to identify and understand where the market is going and what the demands are. The other thing is you want to constantly be moving your company to where the market is going. Doesn't mean massive shifts, and be careful to take risk with your business. And Charlie Munger has an expression. He says, um, I'm going to paraphrase it. The way I like to say it is make sure you shear the sheep and not skin the sheep. I don't mind risking all the wool in one season that I get from one season and risk it on a business idea, because I know that wool can grow back. But if you basically skin it and use the sheep for meat and everything else, well, you have one shot and one shot only. I call those one-way doors. And to bet the farm, bet your business on a one-way door, again, you can lose everything. So be very careful. But you should be taking, big bets that you can actually write the check on a consistent basis for growth. And if the business is not growing, it's dying, period.
That's insightful. Absolutely. We all have to evolve with the time, with the technology, like the stuff which was working maybe 10 years ago, maybe let's say webinars were working 10 years ago, and now it's challenges. And with the time, everything changes. And if you don't, you said it very right, if you don't evolve yourself, if you don't keep on betting your money on the stuff in your growth, in your business, in your vision, all that stuff, you'll be far behind in the race. And that's
And
the
and
reason I think. Yeah.
and I'll share this other piece with you is that just like you have to be very, in my opinion, I've learned I have to be very deliberate about the people I surround myself with in my personal life and my business life and my teams. Um, I never want a team that agrees to everything I say. I never want a team that isn't afraid to challenge me. But on the other hand, I need a team that is positive, that gives positive energy, that gives energy to everything we do. And because if so, there's unlimited potential that gives energy to me and energy to them. And I measure that. I need people in my life that give me energy and create a better version of me. Because ultimately, that to me is what EQ is all about, or emotional quotient about is can you bring out the best of the people around you? And so if that's what you the one of the biggest litmus tests you use, not only for the person you choose to spend your time with or the rest of your life with, but also your team members, is that emotional quotient. Is, are they bringing out the best in other people? The journey becomes so much more enjoyable, because ultimately this is tough. Growing business is tough. And if you don't think that there'll be winters coming, there is winters coming with every business. Now, with every winter, there's an clear opportunity that's out there. Therefore, when COVID hit, instead of watching a Tiger King and hanging out watching Netflix, I doubled down. Never worked so hard in my life. I didn't have to, but I looked for the next big opportunity. And the final thing before we wrap, and just to consider this, and I can't overemphasize the getting the quality of the people in your life and your business balanced, is in tough times, especially we're going through this massive economic change right now, whether it's going to be a massive recession, how long it's going to last for, whether there's stagnation. Again, I'm not going to get into the economics. What I do know is no one can deny that there is a massive shift that's coming.
Hmm.
So the question that I started asking when COVID hit is, what is the first order impacts, and what's the second order impacts, and what's the third order impacts? Someone might be saying, what the hell is order impacts? Well, let me just explain. An analogy would be is when Henry Ford created the Model T and started creating mass production with these cars coming off the production floor. Suddenly millions of Americans had access to cars at a price they can afford. So the first order impact was the sale of cars, right? Granted. The second order impact was that there was gas stations were popping up throughout America at further and further distances. So the people that said, oh my God, with freedom, we can drive further and take long weekends and overnight trips and 3-day trips. And people love to get on the roads with their cars. And that was just part of the outcome, was gas station. Now, people could have easily, Henry Ford could have predicted that. Now, the next thing that happened, not many people could predict. People started driving further, and they wanted to spend the night. Where'd they spend the night? Well, they had boarding houses. Boarding houses filled out. There wasn't places. So the first motels and national motels chains started popping up that led to national hotel chains. And that was the third order impact. So I'm always asking, when we go through these economic downturns, these massive shifts, or even in the pandemic, is not only what the first order impact, when most people are going to predict, hey, there's going to be, we all need hand sanitizer. There's a shortage of the hand sanitizers. Okay, it doesn't take a genius to figure that one out. But what's the second order impact, and what's the third order impact of everything that happens? And that's where real opportunity is. And then you look for sustainable ones. And like I said, I like to get in where I see there's a wave of energy and a wave of changes. And if I can predict that and get behind it, not necessarily want to be the first one, but I want to be close to the first one that does it. But basically, when you have the wind at your back, is better than having gale force winds in your face, especially with starting a new business. All right. It was absolutely a pleasure getting to know you and meeting you.
Same here, Tom. That's amazing. I really love all the analogies that you used here. It's amazing, and it's insightful for our people who are watching us live as well. And any last thoughts, any last message for the people, for our entrepreneur friends out there?
Yeah. Just remember, in every dark moment, we always have them. We always have challenges. There's always opportunity. And I'm going to say this, that we're all stronger than we believe we are. We can always take another step, and after another step and another step, and pretty soon the solution is out there. And so, but reach out to your network and don't be shy about asking for help. People love to help people. It's in our nature. So,
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much, Tom, for your valuable time, for coming on and sharing all the insightful things. And we will be coming back with another show. Thank you so much for people who are watching us. We'll see you next time.